It's nice to see people I've seen earlier today and other faces I remember from other meetings, even here last year. I was here and I did a very similar presentation. I added a few slides this year and have a few further thoughts on it as the market's evolved and different types of projects have come up. How many people in here have had to manage a general contractor, a licensed contractor? One. Yeah, you managed a project that involved a licensed contractor, 2, 3, 4. So, okay, so we got about 5, 6. That's good. And how many people have hired people who were tradespeople and then just managed those individuals' tasks? Okay, so most people in that case. Okay, so this is good. I was talking to my brother, actually in California, who's a contractor, on the way here, and he had a little bit of a laugh, and he said, well, what could there be to managing a contractor when you've hired someone to manage the project? And so it gave me a further thought that I'll get into as we go through this, because you've turned a project over to a contractor doesn't necessarily mean you can now just wait for it to be completed. There's a lot of other components to it, personal selections, finishes, permitting, and regulatory stuff that falls on you as a flipper, or even doing one around your house. So let's get going here. So the Clear Sky Group, Charlie and I started Clear Sky in 2003. And what we did at that time, we were realtors, and we have an independent brokerage. We did a lot of REO business in the 07 to 11 timeframe, and we were acquiring properties all through that time. Charlie's based in Woodbridge. Most of our properties are in the Northern Virginia in Prince William County area. So that worked out really well because we had a concentration of similar properties, and we built up Clear Sky Properties with a portfolio. We were flipping, let's say that at our peak, we're doing like 50 projects a year on houses, and we would sell 2, keep 1, and so we built a portfolio. We also did development of a car wash, parking lots, all kinds of projects, and some of those are still in our portfolio. We have Clear Sky Financial, which we appreciate any business that comes our way. It's a hard money company. This is an old slide. I didn't update it. It says we have 35 million. We probably have like 43 million out now. We have different funds that combine our money and investors' money, and then we loan that out to people who need to flip houses. So I think our huge sales pitch is we're really fast, and we're fast with getting the draws out to you, the funding that you need to keep your project moving. So we are a direct lender for LLC to LLC in DC, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, Florida. We've got a company called Clear Sky Holdings. It's very active in the tax lien space. Our partner on it is Ed Grass. Ed has actually spent the last like 48 hours almost entirely in the district at their tax lien sale. He's left with a whole sheet. We bought maybe $1 million worth of tax liens this year. And some of those properties, it's a whole different discussion, but we'll hopefully get those properties, and they'll be our properties to renovate, fix, and flip later on, and other ones we're just going to get an interest return on. So we have an auto body shop that we lease out, someone else operates. So we've got a few things going on. On top of all this, we have an educational platform. We have courses where you can learn our methods. We wrote a book, and you can learn about that Real Estate Roadmap to Wealth sort of separately. Tonight we're going to talk about construction management, and I think this statement here says what I've learned over the entire course of doing it. All of the money in a project is made when you buy the project. You have to buy it at a price that's lower than you're going to sell it for, net of the expenses, and you're never going to be able to make up for that while you're doing the project with contractors or by yourself or by anybody else. You just can't save enough to make enough, right? If you're not going to get in the end a refund that the guy says, oh, I didn't spend all the money. Maybe you'll exchange some repairs for another repairs, but really your budget you're working with is the budget you're working with, and you're trying to control costs and keep yourself from exceeding that budget. And that's the focus of construction management, whether you're managing work you're doing yourself as a laborer, or whether you're managing independent contractors that you hire independently, or a general contractor. This is the same focus, and it's just you have different touch points on the project with the size of the project and those different methods. So either you're doing it, you have tradespeople doing it, or you have a general contractor who's tradespeople doing it. In some ways, and we'll get into this, the larger projects that you have give you a more understandable, like you could put together a Gantt chart showing the progress of a project, and not everything is done at once. So large pieces of the project can be isolated, and even though the project is larger and more complicated, it's simplified to manage it because it's broken into incremental pieces that you can focus on over time instead of like have different tradespeople all trying to work on a smaller project together. So we'll get into that a little bit. And we have repeated experience. So Charlie and I have flipped probably 450 to 500 houses, or you know, either flipped them or kept them. This is quite a lot, so we've had quite a lot of problems and a lot of related experience. And honestly, every single time there's something new to learn. And I think that's what I like about it, about doing the construction management side of it, because Charlie's a lot of times he's developing the marketing side of it, and then I'm taking care of the back end of it with teams of other people. And I like that there's new problems to solve every time. And I think you do it enough, and the things that are problems that really drive you nuts. Patrick and I were talking about one I hope he brings up. Those are learning experiences, and that you can create opportunities, because you'll know that if you can repeat that, find another problem set that's just like that, you're going to know something nobody else probably knows, and that you can execute on better. And we'll get into that a little bit too.
We're going to him and Charlie with the problem because you're mad and you're angry and annoyed by it. You're like, oh, but here's the good side. You're like, I don't want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
You hear me complain and say that I'm right.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. So that's a great thing about, like, how does your contractor view a problem? Are they going to be a complaining contractor? Like, this goes to a little bit of how you are, like how you like to receive information. Or are they going to be bringing you solutions and telling you there's a problem, but I have 3 solutions? Or they just bring you a problem and then yell that it's going to cost more money? Now, I have had both of these kind of variety of folks, and I'm willing to work with them, but it does create a little different mindset. It's very fatiguing if your contractor is bringing you problems without solutions, and he's complaining to you, whereas you're paying for it, as you know, that you should be the one complaining if anyone is going to complain. But I think the best rule of thumb is to not even let hear yourself complain, because when you're engaged in this type of project, it's just a matter of executing. All these problems are physical problems that can be solved, and you know that when you're getting into it, they're going to come up, and you need to be prepared for them. So there's no point in listening to a lot of different complaints from the contractor. It's not going to add value. So the scope of the evaluation of the project, we're going to go over this sort of twice, but the rental grade product, so you can get the house ready to be rented, and a lot of houses that are functional are very rentable, and you don't have to put a lot of money into them. You can do a wholesale renovation. I don't know if has anyone heard of a wholesale renovation? Okay, it's not like a regular word. It's sort of a combination of wholesale and retail combined. And so what we're doing with a wholesale renovation is we're just getting it really ready for the next person who can easily deliver it to a retail buyer, or get it for themselves and find an opportunity for themselves to move into a house and do the work themselves, or maybe they have friends and family who can help them with it and get a lower cost entry point. And in some markets, like we did this in Sterling earlier this year, maybe 60 days ago, we had 2 full price cash offers on the weekend, and we sold it. It's a very fast exit. We left a little money on the table for the next guy, but we made enough, and we didn't have to stay so engaged with it. We could move on to other projects. So for us, that worked really well. We also tried this. One of the people in our education program tried this on a property that we now are working with him on a sort of shared basis on Dominion in Dumfries, and it did not sell in the wholesale market. That market in Dumfries is not the same as the market in Sterling. And it was a little surprising to me, because I thought it would. I thought there'd be a contractor in the community who would be interested, but it didn't. So they're proceeding with a full-on renovation for another $230,000, and they'll deliver a beautiful $650,000 house when it's done. But thought they could exit at 400, but it's not going to work that
I
way.
have a quick question.
Yeah.
On the Sterling example,
Yes.
how beat up was the house and how much like improved did you make it?
So we bought it from a wholesaler, and it was not very beat up, but it was not in any way updated for the last 20 years.
Okay.
And he was a bit of a hoarder, not like a total hoarder, but the house was just absolutely loaded, and he hadn't had electricity on for quite a while.
Okay.
And let's say we spent about $18,000 start to finish to just empty the house and power it up, put in the light bulbs, and get the HVAC operational. But the windows and doors sort of operated, and they weren't great. And the house was cleaned, and it was not something you'd be afraid to walk into, but it needed it needed a deck, it probably needed a roof, it needed quite a few things. But a lot of people were very interested in it because it's a desirable neighborhood, and they were happy to get in. The neighbors were so happy because this guy didn't cut the grass, and he would argue if people cut the grass for him. So a lot of people were happy, including the guy who sold the house. So it was a strange thing. He didn't really want to meet us. We wanted to meet him. The wholesaler met us. The guy never showed up, but he did sell us the house, and he showed up later after we sold it and wanted some stuff. So that was all right. So then we got Dress the Pig renovation. This is when you're just doing the most basic. This is beyond the wholesale renovation. This is if we had just painted this house and got it functional without updating it. This would be sort of the dressing it up model. And a full gut renovation, I think you really were describing that to me. That's what you're doing in Roanoke. You're taking down old materials, you're putting up new things, but maybe you're not doing an addition or like a major structural change. Maybe you're not putting a expansion of the house together. So finally, the larger project is an expansion or an addition. Frankly, the last project is harder to do than building a brand new house. I think actually full gut renovation, I also think is harder to do than building a brand new house. So we've done that as well. You have to, we'll get into how that's managed. It's a little bit different, but it's well understood. You can do a brand new house construction more mathematically than you can like a full gut renovation, where you're getting into things and you don't know exactly what's there or what you're going to find. So when you're heading into a renovation, you want to know what you're looking for. So in this house, what we're looking at is an over $1 million house on Q Street in DC. We did this house, so it was a shell effectively, and this is a total renovation. And so we put in like a mid upper tier of finishes, the 4-inch slats, the backsplash, the soup filler over the stove, and a number of other details, coffered ceilings and recessed cans. But we're targeting this particular consumer on this particular street. These are really nice finishes. These are probably nicer than what I have in my own home. But the point is, when you're doing a renovation, it's not about what you want for yourself. It's about what you need for the market, right? What's going to sell or going to rent, right? Because you don't need all that. Just if you're making it into a rental in the community, a lot of people will rent a much lower finished property. So you have to think about who your target is when you start. And here's another one that we did, which is a much more modest renovation. We see we didn't bring the cabinets all the way up. We have a fluorescent light, or well, something similar to a fluorescent light. We have a lower end stove with like a back. Here's Charlie. Hey, welcome, Charlie. There you go. And we have a basic bathroom. But people want that. Certainly a renter is going to want that. That's like perfect to move into. It's clean. If it's in a neighborhood that they need to be in for work, or it's safe, or whatever they're looking for, this is ideal for a rental level finish or for an entry level buyer. And then you're looking, just because it's a lower finished product doesn't mean that you need to have a bunch of strange angles and stuff. If you're doing the work well, this becomes a pretty desirable product, right? Everything is square and nothing's loose and falling apart, and it's just functional. And maybe it's not all glamorous like our prior slide, but that's not for everybody, not necessary. So we're heading in this direction, and I don't know, you did a full gut. Has anyone done a full gut project before on a house where they really reduced it down? Doing it now. And so a full gut job is actually a lot easier than this. So over here we're seeing a kitchen or a bathroom on a house that we bought. It was used to make drugs. And on the other room, we're seeing a bathroom that we call like functionally obsolete. Now this would be okay in a rental maybe, but for our purposes of a flip, no one really wants that bathroom. They don't like the old tile. It looks like 1995. You know, it's questionable how the tub's going to perform. But actually, the easiest bathroom to resolve the problem then is this bathroom, because you just throw it all away. And throwing it all away and starting new is just way easier than trying to figure out in this little bathroom whether we're going to take out a wall and then what are we going to do? Are we going to build a custom sub-surround? So now we got a $3,000 glass surround around this old tile. And does that make sense when someone sees it? You know, what are we going to do? This is much more difficult to deal with in terms of future marketing. It's something functionally obsolete that no one wants, right? Because you're trying to set up so you can sell this house next. Now, if you're going to flip this, or if you're going to keep this in your rental portfolio, this is another purpose. It's just absolutely fine. You don't need to do one thing to it. As long as it's clean, those tiles are secure, and the bathroom works. No one is going to mind renting that house. So here we have another one. Which one is harder to deal with? Kitchen, and it's the same answer. So we have a kitchen here where the ceiling fell down in it. A lot of terrible stuff has happened in there, but that's a lot easier to deal with because you know you're just going to throw out everything that's in it, and you do it right away. And then one day into the project, you now have an open space from which you can plan a new kitchen and measure it out. And over in this kitchen, you might walk in and say, oh, it's okay. You know, it's sort of grandma's kitchen, but no one wants to buy grandma's kitchen in the entire world. So you've got old cabinets. They all have clunky closes. You know, they've got a header in here. No one wants that. They want it up higher. It's got a fluorescent light. They've upgraded the countertops in 1997. The sides of the cabinets don't match. I mean, this is just a kitchen that you think you can use, but in the end, you'll never be able to sell the house at a premium using any part that's in that kitchen. So you also have to get rid of that whole kitchen. So this is actually, you're paying more for this house with this condition of this kitchen than you would for this other kitchen house. And that's a much better value to get the one that's totally wrecked because you got to do the same work. So we're talking about smaller projects that drive higher costs. So this is like the smallest project in the world. This is a house we have on Murillo, which was added to our portfolio with Ed. And this was an existing window system that was in the house. It was like a double layer window, and the tenant complained a bit about it, about how energy efficient it was and so forth. It had some water leaks, it was aging, and so we had to mobilize a crew to replace that window. Now that is hard to find. It's built in 1965. It's a space that's already established. It's a problem to find that window. So you had to shop all around for it, and you have to mobilize a crew to put in a new one, frame it all in, you know, to get it just right, and then go outside and get the soffit right. There's a whole mobilization. So just doing one small project is so much more expensive than if we, for example, incorporated this into a project where we're replacing all of the windows in the house. So, you know, when you're at home, just as a retail homeowner, you call an electrician in, he's like, oh, it'll be $700, I'm just gonna run one wire. I mean, that's really a lot of money for one wire. If you're rewiring the whole house, incorporating that is like 60 bucks to get one wire in. So it's the scale of the project shifts the cost around quite a bit. Yeah, I think that's our house in Springfield on Murillo. Oh yeah, we're the corner on Murillo there. So here's a house in Arlington that was a very big project. This guy, there was an existing house here, and he was a borrower. He started with the ambition to get through the permit process quickly and found out it would take him quite a long time to do it. And he actually went through the process. He made every payment. He went through the whole permit, and they approved his permit. But by the time they had finished with him, he was very discouraged. And he just called up and he said, will you just take the house if I give you the keys? Because I think the project will kill me. And I'm thinking, maybe this project will kill me too. But It didn't. It didn't. We made it through it. What we did is we built an entirely new house. And in Arlington, they made us keep the old house in order to keep the lot lines the same of where our house was. You can see the old house is just limited to a couple of walls that were still propped up. We had to build a whole new foundation underneath them. We just propped them up like they were props on a set. And then we built a whole new foundation underneath them and put in a slab. And then when we went up from there, and there's like 3 levels, it was quite a big, beautiful house when done. Since we started with permits in hand, it was not a terrible project. It was everything was square and beautiful and level when it was all done, and it went in stages that we could manage.
How long did that take to get?
Charlie, how long did it take once we had the permits? About 6 months?
Yeah, it took us to start to finish. What he didn't tell you is that the borrower actually paid us $9,000 a month for 2 years. And so $200,000 in payments, plus all the time spent on engineering reports, architects, getting the permits approved. He just came to us at the time. We were running into supply chain issues. It was a little bit after COVID where we had supply chain issues. The cost of materials were going up. The cost of labor was going up. And he basically said to us, I'm not going to make any money here. Here are the keys. And so and he actually got the permits approved and us ready to rock and roll till we found out about the foundation.
So that, if we go to this picture here, this foundation issue, you're going to describe what happened.
And so it took us after that about 6 months to get it up.
Because when we first started, the first thing we did was we started to go to the slab to build up from the slab per the plans, because we had plans of the existing plan showed a slab on the ground. But when the contractor removed the floor to the house, there was no slab. It was just over dirt. And so we took an extra 6 weeks to stopping our work. We had to stop work completely, get approved for a slab foundation, and then build this entire foundation, which was about another $30,000 we didn't anticipate spending on this project.
It was 6 months and it was about $400,000.
Yeah.
$400,000 6 months later.
Yeah.
And so I think we sold it for 1.45 million. We barely got out of Dodge.
Yeah.
I mean, we might have made a little bit of money. I mean, we broke even from a number standpoint, but he paid us 2 years, $9,000 a month. And so, he was a good guy. It's just, he ran into, the unfortunate circumstance with the market changing, the supply chain issues, labor going up, materials going up, and, literally handed us the keys.
He even gave us an estimate to complete if we wanted to hire him back to complete it. And his estimate complete was exactly the same as our cost to complete, as it turned out. But we didn't feel that comfortable with him had him abandon a project in the middle of it himself, so we didn't use him. So again, back to types of fix and flips. So we talked about the wholesale model, the one that we did in Sterling, and then we talked about a basic cleanup to retail, which is dressing the pig, and we have been very successful with that model. If you can find a house that needs a basic cleanup, especially in a high demand community like Sterling or Burke right now, I mean, sure, there are others, but where there are multiple contracts every time, this is a wonderful, wonderful model to follow. In fact, we did not bid on one on the 4th of July that actually fit that model in a crazy market. Like I could not figure out how we would make money at the buy price they had, but people were there when there's such demand. It's unanticipated what people will pay in a high demand market. Now, if the market's just sitting like DC, that is not a good model to go with, because no one is going to buy a basic fix up when there are fully renovated houses for sale. So you have to look at what market you're buying into with what type of product. And a general rehab, we touched on, that's when you're going through the whole house, taking the walls down. That's where your estimating is very challenged, because again, that's a place where you don't know everything you're going to find behind the walls when you start opening things up. And invariably you will find stuff. So you'll need to have a cushion in there, a contingency cushion of say 10%, at least 10% in that sort of situation. And then major changes, architectural things, and like that house we showed you was built, that's easily understood, and we'll talk about it a little bit in a minute, but it's because you can measure how many board feet you're going to need for any given project. You can measure how many foot of flooring you're going to need. And it's all going to go down in an order instead of like a lot of extra work to make it fit. because you have it, everything's square, everything's nice, and everything is, you can be measured, and you can just say, well, okay, I'm going to need, X number of feet of tile for this bathroom. I can do it at this cost, and I need 10% extra to just stuff we're going to break. So you can easily figure that out, as opposed to a bathroom you're coming into, and maybe you're taking down a wall, and maybe then you have to take down another wall, and you're going back and forth, and it's a smaller project. So the big projects are more controlled, but the smaller projects are obviously less costly.
Nice.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Of your 400 or 500 properties, what percentage of them are major addition on what it was?
Yeah, the last one, probably 5%.
And then what about with the hard money? Same question.
With the hard money, probably about 5% at the major level. Yeah. And most people get themselves involved in a general rehab. Like I would say 70% of people get, don't you think? 70% do general. And
I'll tell you this, but we have two different rule of thumbs. My rule of thumb is if the renovation budget's 80 grand, we better make 80 grand.
Yeah.
The renovation budget in DC is 150, we better make 150, because the problem is with the higher renovation budgets, it's more time consuming for us. You have more risk of change orders. You don't know what's behind the walls when you first estimate the job. So we have to have really, really high profit margins on that bottom section there, what says major changes. And if we don't have those high profit margins, we don't do it. End of story. Because in Washington DC, the other rule of thumb in DC right now is also the divided by two rule. If you got a property in Petworth, they say it's worth 900 grand. If I can't buy for 450 or less, we're moving on.
yeah. And those are good rules. The cost of the contracting is one thing, the cost of the holding is another, and then the cost of understanding the permitting process and getting inspections and utilities in the district. It's just unbelievable, like as a percentage of cost. You have to factor that in. It doesn't just go away because you don't like it or something like that. So in the wholesale model, we're looking for repairing the property to functional status. So everything works. Now, the model the one I described, the one on Dominion, we're trying to do it as a wholesale. Not everything worked in it. It needed windows, it needed flooring, it needed to be finished. So it's more of almost a wholesale model when you say that one on Dominion. But wholesale, that works really well in a market where there's low inventory. So I pointed that out on that one. We get to addressing the pig. This is a basic thing. You go to Best Buy or you go online, you order appliances, you call your carpet guy, you call your painter, and then you call your carpet guy. And you don't need a general contractor to do this. This is a basic job. This is a great strategy when you just need to get it on the market and you have a basic product that'll work. And it's good, especially if you have a rental property and that you're turning over. This is effectively what you're doing when you do a major turnover every, say, 7 years, or if you're fortunate, 10 years.
So obviously, you don't have to pull permits in there.
No permits in this scenario. It's not that you're trying to get away from permits. There's no need for a permit. Yeah, you're just doing basic stuff.
Do you have to be cognizant of whether to get the conventional loan or not? It's up to certain code.
Usually on a conventional loan, they're not doing a code inspection of any kind. It's a good question about, like, if you're flipping it, what condition does it need to be in to get to a VA loan, to get to a FHA loan, or a conventional loan. Teddy, are you still over there? So Teddy certainly could be pretty informed about this and tell us. But you can't on a VA loan have a house with any peeling paint on it. You can't be missing handrails on it. With an FHA loan, maybe you could. Won't worry so much about the rough paint, but you can't have a house without a refrigerator. I mean, they're going to have limitations on what you can have, and you can look those specifications up on the internet. But a conventional loan, you could have no appliances. You could be missing appliances. It's not going to be an issue. You could have peeling paint. You could have any number of things. So a conventional loan is often defined by the bank's underwriting. So the bank has an overlay. So wherever they're selling it has one requirement, and the bank will have another requirement. So then that's the same for FHA loans too. The bank can have additional requirements that's issuing the FHA loan, but the minimum number of requirements are the FHA required features of a home.
I would say as a lender, at this small of repair in this category, you're not gonna run into many of those problems. Right? It's gonna be the bigger 30, 40, $50,000 renovations where you're gonna have really gnarly, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing too is on the wholesale model. It doesn't work under the FHA because FHA has a 90-day fix and flip rule. So if you're gonna go wholesale, retail, wholesale model, it's usually only conventional only, maybe VA, but primarily conventional loans.
And you can just put that in the listing. Conventional loans are cash only. You can just put it in there. The MLS has check boxes, but you can just put it in the text as well. Yes, sir.
That the Justin the Pig model is what you said about 80% of investors are purchasing. Is that correct? Like they're generally doing.
No. Most of the investors are doing larger renovations. That's what they're finding. Is ones like I think you're probably dealing with. Fewer find the good, quick dress them up and turn them around properties in this particular market that we're in now, as we're experiencing it now. But previously, we've gone through years in which there was a lot of those that were available. A lot more of them for sure.
So if they have a property that's completely wrong, or we need to be certain rules, they can want to back it, the selling for back it, one anything else.
No, the circumstance can come up, and I think you could speak to that about when you need two appraisals. So if you're doing a flip that has a short, it's been my experience, window in a time is under, some lenders will have an overlay that requires two appraisals. Is that what your experience is with it?
I don't want to make this all about me, but
Okay.
yeah. So if you're buying, some lenders you're buying over $1.5 million doing two appraisals on the purchase, but obviously we're not talking about that. Most of these properties. With the FHA rule, the first 90 days, no sales. Right. 90 to 180 days, that is you can double your money, which is a lot, right? You can't go more than double within that 180 days. That does. Correct. But there's no need for two appraisals.
I've had before,
Yeah, and you can get in a situation where any individual lender, they can ask for anything.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I've certainly seen that. And then they just are trying to avoid fraud, right? Is what they're right. So that no collusion between, yeah, that could protect the customer who's buying it to make sure they're not getting ripped off by someone who's collaborating with a appraiser.
We sold earlier this year, which we heard the family going through a divorce, which had to sell it in court order. And when we bought it, it was new, the windows were new, the kitchen was new, the bathroom was renovated, everything was basically done. We're like, well, we're gonna get it way below value. Let's just buy it, just repaint it, throw it back on the market for a little bit, and then what happened? Repainted it, started to look a little bit nice, and we were like, all right, well, how much more to just do this? I'm voting this much. I'm like, all right, well, go ahead and do that too. We ended up like doing the whole thing. It ended up only costing like $7,500 more. The total renovation was like, we're gonna try to keep it under 5, and it came in at like, but instead of selling it for like 360, 370, sold it for 440.
That's a great return, right? So you're always measuring scope, right? So if you can get returns like that on every dollar invested, you want to just keep investing it. It's when you're just getting a dollar for a dollar that you're putting in. You're like, oh, this is just work. Yeah.
We traveled to like the whole time. We're doing this.
Yeah.
So we're like, all right, it's a little bit more complicated.
Yeah. On a small cost basis, it's okay even to have 100%. If you have a $5,000 budget, you go to 10. It's not going to make any difference if it's going to change your market space you're marketing it in. And then here's the general rehab, where you're doing a remodel of the kitchen and the bath and the basement, and it's when you have more time. So I've worked with a lot of different contractors over time, and we keep bringing new contractors into our community of people that we work with. I've just incorporated a guy, he's been growing from smaller projects to larger projects with us. And we had him step it up and do a 3-bathroom and no kitchen, but we did do an egress window in the basement. And it just blew him up. It was just too much for him. He's too new to it. He couldn't keep the staffing. It doubled the time length. He's very disappointed with his delivery. and we want him to be successful. So we'll continue to work with him, but now we know we have to go back down to like here you could do one bath and all the flooring and clean the house. But so you're just trying to have people grow with you as you grow, so you can they can rely on you, you can rely on them, you can call them, they'll be fast, they'll be available. But remodeling kitchens and bath and basement is not necessarily a small project. It can be quite extensive. A total rehab, when you start changing the layout, you're definitely going to be in a situation where you need permits then. So if you need permits, you need someone who can draw pictures of the home, and you also need someone who can get the permits using the pictures. You probably need a Class A contractor working in conjunction with a design firm. So sort of a design and build contractor, if you will. So then we've been talking, we want to understand how to control the costs with this project. And there are a couple ways to think about cost. So when we're thinking about a large project, we go with a unit and the per square foot cost, right? So we know, okay, we're gonna have 3,000 square feet of space, we're gonna have X number of square feet of drywall. We can look up even online, we can look up, a common cost in the area, we can calculate that, and then we can compare it to what contractors bring us as quotes. And they can measure it off and they can show you exactly what they're going to do and break the whole project down. Now this is very useful in understanding costs, and I wish that we could use an estimate management model like this on every one of our projects, because then we would know, really understand without question how much things are going to cost. But when we're getting into projects like remodel projects, we think about bathrooms, we think about them at different levels, right? So there are all levels that you can do, but if you need a new bathroom in a house that's in, under $700,000 house, I can tell you now that like retail, that's like 12,000 bucks. And then if you go to a contractor, and then if you go to a contractor who's doing other work with you inside of a framework of a renovation, that's gonna be like 7,500 bucks. And I know that based on experience and having done this so many times. There's not like a rule book. I mean, you can look online, you can try to figure out how much the pieces cost, but there is a certain amount of knowledge that you gather over time that doesn't apply to the per square foot rule. You can get estimates from people, and then you could do your own square foot and product. How much does a cabinet cost? How much does a tub cost? How much does a sink, faucet? How much does all this assemblage cost? And then you could start thinking about it. And then you could start thinking about, what if I need to upgrade it? What if the cabinetry needs to float, like in a modern home, in the city? How much more will that cost? To build walls that will sustain that and all this. So really thinking of estimation management in two ways: of pieces of a project or little tiny micro by the line. Ultimately, it all adds up to a final number that you're trying to work under, right? So one way you can control costs on a project is if you get to the project with a contractor that you're familiar with. This isn't your first project. If it's your first project, this probably wouldn't work. That you've worked with the person previously and you say, look, I understand this project could be in done in a variety of different ways, but I have $80,000 to put in here. And so when I leave for $80,000, I have to have the minimum standard of all the windows functioning. They have to be either new or newish, and it has to have a functioning roof, and it has to have an upgrade. It has to have a new kitchen and new baths. I need a new panel. I need a new HVAC system. I don't need to specify to you every nuance of this project, right? I have 80 grand and I have to work within that. Do you think that you could work within that and trade off different things? So like if we can't do the hardwood floors and we have to do carpet, we could do that, but we're trading off. And this is when you have a very trusted relationship with a contractor, right? Because otherwise he's just gonna, or she's gonna just do the absolute minimum thing, and you're just gonna get the absolute minimum work. So you have to have had a lot of experience. But this boxing in a price can be a very effective management tool. Now the contractor can tell you, and we've had this happen, I don't know how many times, I just can't do it within that framework. And if you work with a person before, you can just say, I understand that. I've got to shop it around a bit, and I've got to see if this is going to fit our model, and then you go out and you get more estimates. Now, when you do that, estimates seem to like cluster. So I've had projects where we get 4 estimates. There's a lot of estimates. People do not want to give you a written estimate. It's a lot of work, right? So they're inclined to give you a written estimate if you're producing a lot of work. And so I can sort of get people to do it, and I don't like to estimate every project against multiple people. Sometimes I find the guy's available, I've worked with them before, I want to use them again. We do it under sort of the same pricing model we've done before, and it works. But in some cases, whether we have another client or it's a shared deal, I need to really express clearly, like especially if it's a high budget, I need to really be sure that, you know, I can't save 30% with someone else who has a more highly available team or happens to inventory some materials that are expensive now and he's trying to unload them, whatever. So you can go out and you can get project pricing, and I would say it ranges probably 35% difference, you know, in pricing if you get 4 estimates. And maybe 2 will cluster high and 2 will cluster sort of low. And then when you get the lower clusters, you can sort of start breaking down what the finishes are that they're using. Or then we can go back to, is it hardwood flooring? Is it the vinyl planking? Is it, you know, is it carpet? What are we going to do? Are we pulling permits? Is the contractor licensed contractor, or is he just a contractor and then he hopes to pull permits under your name? If you're doing this as an LLC, in most jurisdictions that is not going to work. They're not going to let you pull it like you're a homeowner. If you have an LLC, if it's owned by an LLC, it won't in Prince William, they won't in Arlington. I don't think they will in Fairfax. I wouldn't even think about it in Prince George's or DC. Anyhow, you have to have, if you're going to be pulling permits, the person doing the work should be capable of talking to the inspection people and capable of talking to the permit office, because you are not a homeowner and you're going to be in a situation where you get the permits in hand, the inspector comes out. Sometimes your contractor, it will be available for the inspection, and sometimes you'll be available for the inspection. And you know, it's good to be quiet and take notes when the inspector comes if he's finding problems, and you can film them or whatever. You don't have to be responsive in that moment. They can check off the boxes on what's wrong and you can go over it with your contractor. If your contractor is willing to be there for the inspections, that's even more useful. But sometimes there's an extra dialogue and it's not that helpful to have the inspector talking to the contractor, and it's good as an owner to be there. So you have to sort of weigh that out, sort of rolling us back to what kind of contractor you're going to get. And you don't need, if you're dressing the pig, a licensed contractor. Anybody who knows how to apply paint and knows how to install carpet is going to work in that situation. But as soon as you get into a situation that you need permits, there are plenty of people who work for the exact same price as the guy who does not have a license. You know, you're not going to save enough. It's not enough. It might be 5% you would save with an unlicensed person. But the risk level is so much higher. Like the cost of the project will be 30% more if they do work and they didn't know what they were doing and the inspector finds it and the home inspector finds it. Like a home inspector, apologize if anyone's here, they don't know everything there is to know about building necessarily. If they're finding the problems that your contractor left behind, there are a lot of problems in the house to be found, right? I mean, it's one thing if the screens aren't balanced or something, but if they're finding structural problems or problems with the plumbing or the electrical, that was a really limited work product that got put together. So estimation management, again, you have to become informed. This is all very much available to educate yourself on. You shouldn't be scared of learning about how houses are assembled and built. You don't need to know every term of art in it. And when people bring them up, like, oh, I need this box or this or that, that's fine. You can just ask them what they're talking about. They're perfectly willing to, most people are just perfectly willing to share that with you, especially if you're paying. That you should never feel like it's inappropriate for you to just really ask questions of people. Like even 2 days ago, I was talking to a utility guy about a gas connection of all things, and he started using language I wasn't familiar with. But I mean, I know what those parts are. So I said, like, what are you even talking about to him? And then he texted back what he was talking about. And I understood, you know, like it's like the meter stack and bar, whatever. It was a simple thing, but he's using different lingo that they use in their industry, which is perfectly normal, but you're not gonna know it unless you do it like all the time. And there's nice books, there's like quick books you can get on Amazon that tell you all local code, national code, and then have pictures. That's very useful. You can look at that and then you can look at the work being done, and then you can ask yourself, hey, does this look like it's like conforms, or are the walls like, are they not square? Are the is it assembled wrong? Or are the wires, does it look like you could screw a nail into the wire? You can ask yourself questions after you learn more about the basics of construction. And it's perfectly learnable, something you can learn about at a high level pretty readily, and then ask questions of your contractors when you get into the project. So draw management, draw is when you're working with a lender, they're going to give you money towards each step of the project, and that's what we call a draw. And it's relevant to the lender because the lender knows how much you're supposed to have completed at any point in your project. And they can evaluate it with pictures if they know you. They may not come on site, or they could send someone else out to do an inspection, or they could come. I go myself on more complicated projects. I certainly go the first time always, and then may rely on video after that. So this enables the lender and you to know what should be completed each time you get money. For us, we give money as pre-draw money. So before you even start, we believe in your project. If this is a $100,000 project, we'll give you draw one, it will be $25,000. But with that, you're going to have, and this is cut off a little bit, but you might have your plans and your permits and your trash out complete before you ask for your second draw. So you've done a number of things. And maybe you secured the property and started an electrical heavy up, but whatever it is, we know what it is you're going to do with that first draw money. Then we know what's going on with the next draw. This is a way in which you can organize things. It's not necessarily a Gantt chart showing you like, oh, you have to do this part of the electrical before you can do this part of the HVAC or something like that. But it tells you like, hey, all of the metals for the HVAC should be installed at the end of draw 2. So on draw 3, the HVAC system can be put in the house. Like you know now as an owner what the steps are that you're expecting. So as a lender, my goal is to help you do this in a way that makes me feel confident that at the end of step 4 that you're not going to need any more money because maybe you don't have enough money, and I certainly don't want to be lending more money into a project that we didn't plan for. We're really trying to control costs. So in your budget, you'll have some contingency costs at the bottom, and then that money will float, and almost invariably you'll use it on landscaping or something eventually, but you never know. Maybe you'll finish under budget and have the contingency funds left over. But draw management is a way to simplify your process without thinking about charts and schedules and what everyone's doing and who's working over who. But even if you've hired a general contractor, this enables you to see what's going on. And then the general contractor can worry about how the electrical guy is interacting with the framing team and the HVAC team, and he's responsible for all that. And all you're looking for is finished milestones. And that enables you to look at the milestone and say, oh, well, that looks complete, and that looks, the site is clean, the things that make sense to you are there. So you don't need to know everything the contractor needs to know, but you need to know the steps, and then you and the contractor can decide up front, oh, these are what the finishes are, so you don't have to get into all of that later on. And at the end, the contractor says, oh, well, we have some gray flooring instead of this light tan flooring, and this is much more cost effective. It's available right now, I could buy it. And then you could just quickly decide, okay, we'll make that switch. But up front, you've discussed like what product type you're going to get, and he's able to work within that framework. So profit management on every project that we do, I put together a small schedule, and the schedule shows us how much money that we're going to make on the project, and we call it's the return on the sales off the sales price. I call it the CJE margin because Charlie over there, it was all when we started. He wanted to know is what is our total margin on the project, and that's how much money we're going to make off of the gross sales price, off of the after repair value. So in this scenario, we make 11%. And that, when we're flipping a house, is about what our target is, right? So if we're flipping a 400,000, it sells for 400,000, we want to make $44,000 on it. And underneath it, we can see all the detail of what we've spent and what we paid to who. And up above, we see how much we financed it for, how much capital we put into it, so we can start understanding our cash-on-cash return. So if our net profit is $48,850 as it's shown here, and the capital contribution is $93,449, our return on our cash invested is really good on this project. And then we're also managing how many days it's taking us to do it. This project was start to finish in 60 days. It's a project on Greendale. It's a little old now, but one we did a while ago.
So, sir.
Sure.
We're going to labor.
That's a super question, right? So you can do it either way. You can do it either way. You're going to spend a lot of time if you get involved with the materials, right? If you are trying to save the money on this project by going to buy discounted materials instead of finding your next flip, this is probably not a good economic thing to use of your time. We have had investors who do that almost exclusively. So they're going around and they're so happy that they found, a Home Depot with a scratch and dent washer and dryer, and they saved, $200. And I'm happy for them too. The problem is to do that is like a half a day of work, right? And so on an hourly basis, we're talking about you're involved with projects that are, hundreds of thousands of dollars. You can't save that $200. That money is better spent on a new product. And first of all, no one's going to get something dented, and you're not going to get some flooring that's been stored in a place where the temperature's not controlled, and a door that's been leaned up against something so it won't close right. So you're getting away from all the bad product that's out there that's being sold at a discount, which people think is a good deal because it's just basically bad product. And then you're getting into spending your time finding the deal, how to find the next one.
How do you control prices in the contract? Going to by themselves.
That's right.
Local aid, and then you look up and all this is that you're again or this not to control it. Right? And then it's like right?
It can be wasteful, and that goes with the relationship with the contractor, right? So like if you tell the contractor, I want a entire appliance package where everything in the kitchen is under $3,000 and you have a $1,500 budget for the washer and dryer. That's it. I don't want anything more expensive. So that's it.
So that's include faucet.
No, I'm just saying like that's like kitchen appliances. So you can narrow that down. You can give them a budget for that.
Okay.
So for the faucets, you can also do that, right? You could tell them, I want faucets within this price point, because faucets, I'm certain that like if you've replaced even one, there's like a big range in price. You can have a $20 faucet, and in the same place you can have like literally an $1,800 faucet. So you have to go over that in that first stage of the project where you're specifying with them the finish level that you're trying to achieve. If we go back and think about it, that's to the scope of the project, what the purpose is. Is it a rental, or is it a mid-tier market product? Is it like a renovated product where they want everything like finish? Is it the type of thing with a historical element? It's very expensive to achieve some of these finishes that people want in some markets. So maybe you don't want to do that market. Maybe you do want to do that market. But whatever it is, you're thinking about that up front when you're looking at the scope of the project, when you're buying the house, about what your out sale is going to look like. And so then you sit with a contractor and you go over that with the contractor. And like, if the contractor is used to working in Virginia and they're delivering a product in the DC, even if they're licensed there, you got to tell them up front, we're not using the same finishes because they don't like the curvy handles in Virginia. They want a square black handle. They want all the trim to be square. They want every cabinet to be white. They want white on white with a gray ceiling and a gray floor. This is exactly what they want in the city right now. And you know this by looking at open houses, at more recent sales, at houses that are selling fast on the market. That's how you sort of get your understanding of the finishes that you're looking for. You take pictures of those finishes and you show them to the guy, and you just keep sending them to him. And then if you want to if you want to get down to the granularity of the fixtures, you could get a fixture list and order all the fixtures. Or you could make a selection of 2 or 3 kinds that have pictures and price ranges and give it to him, and he could either order like a quality Kohler product, or he could order the Amazon stuff that looks cool and works for 3 days. But whatever it is, that you get him to do that, right? To do what you want, and in that framework, and don't let him like deviate.
No. I was gonna say I buy all this stuff on Amazon.
Yeah, it looks really nice. It looks really nice, right?
On the home for like a minute, but then the new owner's gonna. But no. I was gonna say, just flip 400 homes. I'm on my 4th home.
Okay.
I think it's important that you go through the process like once to like understand, use some of the tools, and then get you. Because before you've done, you don't know what any of the prices should be. And then, like I now have a flooring guy, an electrician, on top of the general contractor, like people that I can trust. It's, yeah. So with my, both with that general contractor and with Amazon, right, there's like a framework. And then I'm definitely not spending my whole day on it. But there'll be some conversations about finishing. And I taught him, like, look, I want it to look like this, but find the cheapest, best option like this. And it doesn't have to be this. And then Amazon, I know that Sam, that's Amazon a little bit, but you could buy virtually all the finishes on Amazon. And then I can also notice they have refurbished stuff. So you can even get a discount on top of that. And they're good prices.
Okay. And you're gonna, don't find out that you something Amazon, it doesn't work. It's in there. Well, I'm gonna go anyway.
Yeah, your contractor's never sending it back. They're going to just throw that thing out. Yeah, or they'll keep it and use it in some other terrible.
What I was trying to say is,
Yeah,
if it's 40 hours of your time, or it's 0, or it's 3 hours, I think you can do a little bit and still have your print on it without, doing the DIY. I bought a home so I could pick everything and put it on it.
but what you could also do is if you're staging a house for sale, and I recommend that in our experience, you have a good stager. You talk to the stager before you get started about what they think is going to sell, what product, what's the finishes, and just ask them to show you like 3 houses that they've done with pictures. You look at the pictures and you show your contractor the pictures, and that's it. And that works wonderfully, especially with really local market stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's a great question.
We've been fortunate that we bought everything in Woodbridge, all of the entry level homes. That's great. And when we look at them, honestly, they all look the same. Yeah. Because it's the under 450. So my contractor now, it's getting kind of boring now, but when we go look at a house, he knows what we want, and he can give me a price. And we thought we have this much to budget, and you know what style and color and all that. So he knows it'll work under what we need. So we don't have to really be on top of it anymore. He knows we're going to be ordering the same cabinets, the same lighting, same.
Boring is good. Boring to you is good because you guys are unconnected. Yeah.
We wrote an offer on a ARV, $1 million house 2 weeks ago. And I talked to Zach and I was like, I don't know how to renovate $1 million house. Like, I don't know, we've never done that. My price point was like lower. So it's gonna be complete, like we can't use the same cabinets, the same, it has to be, so we like doubled our repair cost.
Sure.
And we're like, and our contractor told us that, we'll get it yet, but it's a different game when you go to a different sort of mode, so.
Yeah. But it's not, you can learn one game, you can learn any of the games in the same way. If it's expensive, it's no different. It's just a different game, right? Yeah. So it's all very learnable.
At what point in the process do you build in for like if things go wrong, if you discover that the HVAC is busted or whatever, do you build that into your profit management? What kind of wiggle room do you give yourself and what your estimated profit is going to be?
That's a great question. So the profit is, we view it as like a cost, right? We do not change the profit number. What we do is we put a contingency in, right? So our target is say 12%. Our minimum target is 10%, right? So we hit an 11, that's okay. So we're in the target range on the profit, so we're still there. We have some contingency built into the budget itself. And so we can use that contingency, and then we can use a little bit of the profit contingency, what's the profit contingency, but stay within the framework. And then if it's never gonna meet within that, and we're getting like to a 7 or an 8% margin, then that probably happens at the time of sale because we didn't understand the market well enough, or the market shifted a little bit, and then that shift is right off of your profit margin, right? So it's right off the top. If the market's 3% lower at the time we sell it 100 days later, then that's a problem, and that impacts our margin. But we're buying into the current market, understanding the current market, and targeting it, and so that's what we try to do to keep our profit in its sweet spot.
But we usually borrow all the money through all our flips, and if I have a renovation and we budget like 80 grand for renovation, I'll go to my contractor and be like, I got 65,000 to do this. Is that doable?
Yeah, because you got 15 in
I'll
contingency.
keep my, yeah, we have.
But
that
that's
budget.
true.
Just in case.
No, that's
But
perfect.
if we don't hit it, then great, you know, we just have the extra 15.
Yeah.
Whatever to make it.
Precisely for, as I say, for landscape or whatever can incrementally
Yeah,
jump that price.
But if
Yeah.
it does go over, the house we're flipping now, both of them. One of them I thought we had HVACs, and it turned out to be just a gas furnace. We had to install 2 new HVAC systems. 2 air conditioners. Yeah, luckily it's just the unit because home's already vented, but it was, you know, an $11,000 cost that I had didn't budget for.
Yeah.
But I had the money for it.
Yeah. Perfect. That's exactly how it's supposed to work. Yeah. So in contractor selection, we're thinking back to the scope of the project. Do we need a general contractor? Do we just need a tradesperson to do an upgrade to some plumbing? Do we need a handyman who can do a bunch of different things to sort of renovate a bathroom? Perhaps they could just change out a bathroom as a handyman without having to change any walls and so forth. If we're doing a big project, we're going to need an engineer. We're going to need an architect. We need, what's that? Oh, drawings, yeah, certainly the drawings. And we might have to have other people in the engineering field also, depending on if we need to change grading or whatever surveys. And there's a lot of things that you need when your projects get large in scale. So considerations, know your costs, we talked about your general contractor, who you're going to hire if you need one, your soft costs, and so the soft costs is the word that we use for describing your plans, your permits, your drawings, whatever you need that's not physical on site. And I like this here. I remember from last year, triple your reasonable estimate. For whatever reason it is, soft cost is always higher than what you lay out on a piece of paper. If the architect says it's going to be $4,000 and the permit guy says it's going to be $3,000 and you've got $7,000, just put $14,000, because by the time you have to revise it and you have to hire another person, there's just always something. That is the hardest thing to control, is soft costs. In matter of fact, we have a project in the city. The guy recently bought a church, and he wanted to get plans and permits to put up 9 units or 11 units of condos. And we had him work with an architectural firm that we know well. And he started with a budget. And hey, Charlie, what was the budget on that one on 44 that we started with? He started with a total cost of $850,000 in soft costs and acquisition. Harry's, the church conversion that we're working on now. The soft costs. I'm talking about, how do these soft costs just multiply?
So, yeah, so the soft costs, well, we gave him a loan for what, $750,000?
Yeah, something like that.
So that, it was supposed to be $750, soft costs only, and then, we then had to modify our loan to 1.25.
Yeah.
So just the soft costs alone are jacked up, almost $400,000 or $500,000.
Once they started with the water
Yeah,
and the engineering and everything, the same people who gave them the estimates came right back, and these are very reliable people, came back and said, oh, we have all these additional costs.
Yeah. But it's a 4-lot project on Q Street that we're converting into 9 units. I shouldn't say we're converting into 9 units because we're the lender on it, but we're actually the developer on it, because the actual sponsor, our client, has no idea what he's doing. So we made him use our people, our engineers, our architects, everything to get this thing to site plan approval.
And they're very reliable, and his costs went through the ceiling,
Yeah.
through the roof.
So did he make any money?
He will.
He will.
He'll make plenty of money.
Yeah, he'll make money because he's in there for about $2.5–3 million. When he's done, he's gonna have 9 condos, which will be worth about $1.2 million each. So whatever that number is, it's about a $10.8 million out, all in about $3 million, and then construction costs will probably be $4 million. So he'll maybe $5 million. So he's got some money to play with. Yeah.
Yeah.
So soft costs is an area to focus on those larger projects. Maybe you're experiencing that with yours. And actually, the one Patrick mentioned to me, you were telling me about a project that had some historical permitting, and Charlie's groaning. But yeah, that can really drive up your costs too. So when you're working with a contractor, don't make your decision exclusively on price. Maybe the lowest price contractor is the best contractor, but not necessarily, not if they're not licensed or if they don't have experience with the scope of work. Remember, it's the scope of work that matters a lot because the complexity changes dramatically when the scope changes, the number of people they need, and their ability to mobilize changes.
We just had that same problem on Dominion.
Yeah.
We got the one quote for, what was it, 185? We had a quote from our other guy at like 225, but the guy that was at 185, he had never done a project this big ever. Whereas the guy at 225, we had only been using him for 20 years.
And the 185 guy had no direct employees to do punch out, no one to call, and no license.
Oh, yeah, that part too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
I know, he's like, all the tradespeople have licenses. I'm like, well, who's going to talk to the county when the county shows up? Oh, anyhow. So they have to be familiar with the jurisdiction. We talked about that. So if there's a historical overlay or things that are known about the plumbing, the gas in the area, that's important. And they have to be like reasonable people. Like if your contractor is a person who you wouldn't want to spend any time with, then this isn't probably a good fit for you, because not only do you have to spend time with them, they're going to be in a place where they're interacting with your neighbors. And your neighbors, if you are not accommodating to them when you're disrupting the neighborhood, you are going to have nothing but problems, just nothing but problems. You have to do things on 9th Street. So George, he said his name. So George goes to 9th Street and he renovates a house nicely and he finishes it. And then at the end of it, he had permits, and at the end of it, he gets delivered a stop work order right when it's going to finish. And it's because the neighbor is really upset. He's having a bad relationship with the contractor. George isn't there. The contractor is being hostile with the neighbor because the neighbor is complaining about sound. And what the neighbor really wanted it to say was, could you do something about sound in the house, like put up an extra layer of drywall or use some soundproof insulation or anything on our party wall, so I don't have to hear everything through this old wall. And instead, they ignored his complaint. The guy called DCRA. DCRA came and did the easiest thing and put a stop work order on the house. George is in the process. He's trying to get refinanced. And his lender at the closing says, the appraisal says right in here that it's contingent on removing the stop work order because it's a public record. The appraiser was clever and looked, and any good appraiser will look. And so now George had to go back and hire his architect back again to design a wall package that would work on the inside. And it's not a huge thing, it's under $10,000, but it's at least 6 weeks of delay to get it approved by the city to remove the stop work order so he can put up the new wall and then satisfy the neighbors. So a contractor who can interact politely with people and be reasonable with people is so critical. We just did this house on Division Avenue, and the house didn't look quite right because it's adjoining a neighbor's who had sort of collapsing gutter system. We replaced the neighbor's gutter system for her for free. And you have to have a relationship with the person. You have to call her first if she doesn't want to talk to you. What are you doing to my neighbor's house? And you say, look, I'd like to improve your house. And then you have to have a good relationship because you don't want them to then claim that you've damaged their house while you were improving their house or something like this. So you have to have a contractor who's working with people, and that's critical. Let's see what else we got here. So seeking opportunities to minimize your scope of work instead of having scope creep go up. Know your market, zoning, building codes, which you can learn by talking to contractors, talking to people who are doing work in the area. Build relationships with your vendors as you're building a whole pool of people that you can call electrical tradespeople, anybody that you need at different times. Visit the site. Don't leave a project, no matter how much you trust the person, unwatched. You have to go at least once a week to see the person's progress. And if you get there and the site isn't clean and the guys aren't working and there's loud music playing, disrupting the neighborhood, this is like a real thing. Like, the contractor may be very reliable. He's leaving a crew chief and maybe 3-4 guys, and the guys are getting out of hand here. These are really important things. No one wants to hear a bunch of construction sounds and music at a job site when they're working from home, like 20 feet away, right? So you cannot let these sites get up out of control. And no inspector who's doing permit inspections wants to come in a site and see it unclean. So if you go into your site, you don't have to know one thing, but if you know how to pick up your bedroom in the morning, you know how a site should look. You should be able to walk freely and not fall. There shouldn't be any sharp objects, any open rails. If you feel like you're going to fall down the system, they should build a temporary rail system that you're not going to fall. It should be a safe place. And if it's a big construction site and you go do it like that one where we did in Arlington, everyone should be complying with, you should understand the basics if you're doing something that big of what safety requirements are. Fencing for this site, silt fences for the site, how everyone has a safety helmet on, not nearby, but on the site, because you don't want the neighbor calling someone or the guy just happening to drive by because the inspector lives in the area or something like this and sees your site unsafe. That is just the absolute last thing, because as soon as you're identified as a problem site, like you're not running a clean site, you're not pulling all of your permits, you're not doing all your inspections, the focus on you is going to be like a laser. You're going to get so much scrutiny. But if you're doing the right things to start with, you're really going to have a pretty minimal experience with like oversight authorities. And then you focus on the timelines and cost. And so I appreciate that. That's in conclusion tonight. I think that's got it. Do we have any questions? Thanks. Any questions or projects you're working on you want to discuss?
After almost project is done, do you go and do a kind of final walkthrough? And how thorough do you have to be? Because for my wife, she could pick out this like little things, but you don't see it, right? And she's just complaining, and I don't know how much of that should be redone.
So that's a great question. The question is like how detailed when you do the final walkthrough on a property, right? And it depends on what you were targeting, right? So if you're getting it ready for a rental state, that her observation of all those things is not going to be useful at all. We don't need the finishes like where you can shine a vertical light on it and see no imperfections in the wall. So like they have different levels for that. Like they call it like a level 5 is like what you do at the White House. Like the wall is absolutely perfect, it's square, it's flat, the finish. You do not need that in most product. Now, so you have to think about the consumer that's coming to your product, right? So if they're buying a $1 million house, everything should be square. Like you shouldn't see any weird trim, right? If they're getting an entry-level house in the city for $700,000, they're going to anticipate the floors are wonky and that the trim is weird and that the walls are a little bit lumpy. You know, in the city, the house is 100 years old. So, but if they're buying that same product and they're spending $1.5 million, $2 million on it, that is not what they're expecting at all. They expect what your wife wants, which is perfect, near perfection. But there's no reason that things that can be right, shouldn't be right. So if they've done a read on a bathroom and everything is new in the bathroom, everything should be square, everything should be fixed. There shouldn't be any gaps in the grout. Everything should be caulked. Everything should be, if it's new, it should be right. Even if it's a low finish level that you bought inexpensively, it should at least be at a minimum installed correctly. And that would be an appropriate observation. But if you're just fixing a basic house flipping, fixing up the pig, dressing up the pig, there's going to be a lot of defects. There's going to be all manner of defects, but it's going to be still saleable. So you're gauging it to what you've paid for and what you're expecting to deliver. It's a good question.
So we're renovating 3,000 square foot house. We haven't running. This is something thinking about maybe having you purchased the house. The plumbing, electrical, and the furnace have already been changed when we purchased it. We got a stop work order on the house, the whole story. But the permitting person came and he said, "I'll put the furnace." I was like, "I don't know. I bought it with the furnace, brand new." He goes, "I know it's new, but you've now inherited a problem." I'm like, "What's the problem?" Because the guy didn't pull permits to put it in. And I'm like, "Why is that my problem?"
Yeah, so that's an interesting circumstance. So now you've got scrutiny from these people who are on you, right? So they're going to start looking for things. Now, in response to that, if you have a permit for the totality of the house, then you're impacting the totality of the house. You are responsible for that now. So the guy who pulls your permits has to know that scope matters, right? So if you say you're redoing a porch on a house And the handrail system is the old one that's sort of up high like downtown and not down low like that. That external handrail, because you repaired the whole porch, is a part of that system, and that needs to be the new code. So like you inherited that because you didn't restrict your permit in in this case, the permit on the porch, repair ceiling on porch and really narrow in scope. The bigger your scope of your permit, then they can, when they're in an aggressive mode, they can put more pressure on you to make changes. And when the guy's on site and you've done something wrong, I can tell you that there's no lawyer, even our lawyer, our partner Ed, is not going to be able to fix that. You have to fix what they're telling you to do, because ultimately the authority will be pushed down to the guy, the field guy. If he feels it's unsafe or not done correctly, the people in his office are going to stand behind him and say, look, you can just take it and forget it, because we have a right to revise our, based on what we're observing for safety. If you have any kind of safety thing like that.
So the contractor goes, I have an HVAC guy, he'll come and he'll pull the permit. He's gonna want to inspect it first before he puts his name on the permit. So he came inspect it, and he said, no way. He said, whoever put this in just hard, there's no safety, there's no anything, they just put it in there and left this, ended up being a $2,300 fix. Yeah. Fix it towards the code. And then, well, luckily the code inspector was like, my dad's a friend, so I said, all I added was an AC. He just looked at me. I said, I didn't tell you that. And so, but yeah, you can inherit problems. That's a new thing I learned. I learned a lot of things with this one house, but you can inherit problems.
Yeah, well, if you touch it or you pull a permit on it, you've made it your problem. So if he saw the new AC and, he's already he's suspect. Yeah.
Just on what you were saying about the permit, so when you roll to pull a permit or you're trying to get a permit, you're saying be very specific about what you're doing.
Yeah, so they're not giving them a broad, yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, you don't want to open that can.
So in that situation, with the handle, like you were saying, if you had said specifically you were doing this handle, would they have not gained you with other stuff? Or?
Well, in this case, it's actually the one I did on Division. So the inspector we have is third-party inspector, and he has oversight from the city. And so he clarified for me, he said, you went and did a repair on the porch. And we really did, because we redid the brick and we did the roof and we did this and that. He said, that handrail that's outside the porch is part of the porch. And if the oversight people come back, I'll call and just tell them I missed it, and you're gonna have to hit it. But if you had been a narrow and you just said, I'm gonna repair the bricks and repair the ceiling on the porch, it wouldn't be subject to like we had written in the thing. This is my own mistake. We just did this. We're gonna repair the porch. So you have to be very careful of a narrow, if you would prefer a narrow permit. That is actually what you're doing, because you don't want to get a narrow permit and then go outside the scope of the permit. You want it to be actual.
Would it be okay to hire like two different contractors? Let's say like one contractor gave a really good price on the kitchen remodeling, and the other contractor gave a really good price on like bathroom remodeling. So one contractor does the bathroom and the other contractor does the kitchen, kind of.
Yeah, I don't think I would approach it that way. They won't work well together. Even when you have tradespeople working under a general, they're only like working under that framework of that general. If you're hiring the tradespeople, you're the person who has to then manage all of those exchanges between them. So in this case, if you're doing bathrooms and the bathrooms need GFI and the kitchen needs new electrical, and you have a different electrical contractor working in both of those places, you're going to have a conflict that's going to come up that there's no amount of money that will be worth that.
Really good price is relative, right? So you're getting relatively good retail pricing instead of having one general contractor that you trust to give you a fair price on all the labor, and you guys work together.
So again, with the pricing, it's important to get a good value price and to have several to choose from and understand it. But you have to go back, you're making your money when you buy it. Like these projects, like how much is the difference between, if it's a $100,000 renovation, one guy will do it for 90, one guy will do it for 110, but you're trying to make like $100,000 on this deal. So you need someone who's going to deliver, and so the range of 90 to 110 is not as relevant as delivering in a timely manner, being trustworthy, coming back after the home inspection to do the little punch items that come up, because you're not going to address all of them, like in your wife's case, where everything's finished properly. You're just not going to, because you're not paying that much for that service. So he's going to have to come back and do that little punch out. But at the same time, you don't want him to have to be addressing plumbing issues on a punch out list, right? I mean, you want him to do things that are more or less immaterial, finished things.
I got a question. It might be two questions. The first one is, how do you mentally prepare yourself for like the buy once, cry once situation? And I'll give you an example. Before my house burned down, we redid our bathroom, and I had everything taken care of. I bought the tile, I'd done everything, but I admittedly was taking forever doing this job. So we had a contractor come in, and I was like, "Hey, we just need you to put the tile in." And he gave me just ridiculous high quote, and I said, "No way, I'm going to do it." And I did it that weekend. But I have a really hard time seeing the price, knowing that I can probably take care of it, but just not as fast. But swallowing it, having them take care of it. What techniques do you use?
In your head, right? So it's back to the same question though. What's the use of your time, right? So you're going to make $50,000 on a project, or that you could potentially find in the weekend that you would spend remodeling the bathroom and save $1,500. Now you can be sure to save the $1,500, but you have zero probability of making 50.
Yeah, so that's not fair. And how do you know if the contractor is experienced or not? Is there a way you could find out?
Oh, that's great. Charlie calls it MLSing the contractor. So if you're doing a larger project, they should have projects that are for sale on the MLS, and that you can look at, and you call the owner and ask them about it.
And do you trust Google reviews?
No, I don't think I'd trust Google reviews. I have, for specialty work, believe it or not, in areas that we don't do much work, I've used Angie's List and gotten a couple of competing quotes. And there were some pretty rough and sketchy people, but I have had success using them. I found a pretty good installation person in doing that, and I found a guy who would do waterproofing doing that, and that was successful. So I'm not sure about Google's reviews. I would go with Angie's List, and then they send out three or four people to quote it, and then you sort of compare it and just go back to the practice of understanding if the people have local experience, what have they done that they can show you, and how is it to interact with them, and how does their pricing fit, and are they licensed?
Sure. For just full that premium.
Yeah.
Do you have a target dollar per square foot for the remodel overall that's pretty consistent, or does it vary a lot between your different?
No, I don't think it would be per square foot. I wouldn't see it as that. It varies so much because we work in different jurisdictions. So like doing a remodel in Dale City and Prince George's are approximately the same. But if we start doing something that's like in Vienna or in the city that's in a higher end area of the city, or brand new in a not so high end, I mean, there's just so much variability in finish level that I'm not sure that square footage really gets me there. Yeah. So there's ranges. So we're probably targeting like if you have a price range of finishes, we're probably targeting like at the 40% below, just a little below the average finish. Because you're not getting that much more money on the out sale when you do it 100%, right, of the highest end stuff. You save that for your wife who wants the wall perfect and the faucet just right and everything. Like, honestly, I've spent so much on like a small bathroom in my own house. Like, we've done entire house remodels for what because you get involved personally, and then you want this and you want that, and you want the walls changed. This stuff is so expensive to do all that detail. But if you're just coming at a project new, you don't have to have a preference, because the new buyer doesn't know that property any more than you do. You can just do it in a cost efficient way, and someone will come in and enjoy it just like they built it exactly for them. So. All right. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.